Hey, today is Wednesday, and the readings for today is Zechariah chapter 11, verses 12 and 13, Matthew chapter 26, verses 6 through 16, and then Mark chapter 14, 1 through 11. I have chosen to share Mark chapter 1, 1 through 3 actually. It's 2 days before the Passover. 2 days. Christ has 2 days left on this earth before the Passover and before their plan comes to pass. They think it's their plan, but it's not their plan. But look at with me, Mark chapter 14, verse number 1 said, "It was now 2 days before the Passover and the feast of unleavened bread. The leading priests and the teachers of religious law were still looking for an opportunity to capture Jesus secretly and kill him. But not during the Passover celebration, they agreed, or the people may riot." So that's what the Pharisees and the Sadducees and religious leaders are doing. They're trying to figure out, how can we get this rebel out? How can we get rid of him and not upset the people at the same time? What can we do to make this happen? But while that's going on, in verse number 3, meanwhile, it says, Jesus was in Bethany at the house of Simon, a man who had previously had leprosy. While he was eating, a woman came in with a beautiful alabaster jar of expensive perfume and an expensive myrrh, and she broke open the jar and poured the perfume over his head. Some of them at the table were indignant. "Why waste such expensive perfume?" they asked. "It could have been sold for a year's wages and money given to the poor." But Jesus replied, "Leave her alone. Why criticize her for doing such a good thing? You always have the poor, and you can help them whenever, but you will not always have me." And then it went on to say that what she has done is prepared me for my burial. You remember we talked Sunday about a destiny and how God has a destiny for your life? The religious leaders are trying to figure out, how can we eliminate this guy's life? He's at a man's house who had been healed of leprosy. Now he finds himself there, and a woman comes in and takes this expensive perfume and breaks it over her head, opens it up and pours it on his head. And he knew, and other people didn't know, but she was preparing him for the fact that he was going to die. He was preparing his body for the burial. I find it so interesting. Here's a woman that shouldn't have the insight that these religious leaders should have had, but she has insight. And she understands that she is obeying God by taking this year's worth of wages, according to the disciples, and using it for the burial of Christ. You know what I find interesting is, God is the same today, yesterday, and forevermore. There are times when God will tell you to do things that don't make any sense to anybody. There are times when you know beyond a shadow of a doubt that you're absolutely following the will of God for your life. Doesn't make any sense. Can't comprehend it. But here's a woman doing something that everybody, the disciples, were indignant. They said, "What are you doing? You're wasting money. We need this for poor people." But you said, "Well, wait a minute. She sees something you don't see." Can I tell you this? Because everybody doesn't see it the way you see it, doesn't mean you're wrong. Because when you interpret the word of God and God speaks to you and you know what you're doing is spiritually correct, then what you have to know is God knows. So what we have to do is we have to make sure to fulfill our life by fulfilling the word of God in our life. What this woman did was, she had insight, spiritual insight. I want to encourage you, turn up the volume. During this time of coronavirus, turn up the volume. Hear what God's saying to you, because God's got a plan. As a matter of fact, the Bible said that from that point on, everybody would know that woman because of what she did. Didn't make any sense to anybody else, but she heard from God. I want to encourage you, hear from God this week. Thank you. I'll see you tomorrow.